It's going to be a short one, a repair job on Florence mesh, because there's a few issues that need fixing, and it's good demonstration for everyone. So firstly, here's our high, here's our low. Neither of these are on the grid at all, or in the middle. So let's first, we want to snap to the bottom. We want to fix this end gone, 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's poke face. Select everything, snap all the verts to that middle vertex, snap all the points to that middle vertex, and we can snap this whole thing to the grid, and we can do the same here. So there's our low inside the high. You'll notice it's missing some stuff, right? This is not, we need a low poly representation of this. Sadly, this is just so high poly. I tried to delete edge loops on it, but it was freezing Maya, so maybe we can use the reduce tool. I'll have a look in a sec. First things first, for some reason this part is separate. Let's make sure they're combined. And let's merge the verts. Cool. Now, this edge, there's no change in curvature, right, on this edge here, so there's no point in having this edge. It's not changing the silhouette at all. So I'm going to delete these, also not doing anything. And I'm going to delete this. Similarly, this edge is not doing anything. And this is an end gone. So what do we do here? Probably delete this. Gonna grab these 2 verts, merge to center. There's only one there. There's only one there. And there's only one there, so that's fine. I'm going to delete these 2 edges because we don't need this edge. And we don't need this edge. We need to triangulate it at some point to go from this round shape to the square shape. No point doing it down here. We might as well do it up here. So I'm going to grab both of these and the edge loop. Control delete, make sure we get rid of those verts. And then I'm just going to go around, connect components on all of these. That one didn't delete for some reason. Same reason as last time. What? Okay. Couldn't reach the edges in there, so I just went from the face, converted selection to edges, and hopefully I can delete those 2 edges. And we should have one triangle here that's correctly connected. We can check in Smooth Mesh Preview that it's all correct. We're not subdividing this, but Smooth Mesh Preview will show a big distortion if you have an end gone or if you have a double vertex or something. We can see it's symmetrical all the way around, so we know it's worked out. So here's another slight problem. Well, this high poly glass isn't high poly anyway, so let's delete that, and we'll just work on it here, and then we'll just duplicate that into the high. We can see inside the mesh here, right? These edges are going to be transparent. In fact, I already test baked this, and you can see this is how it's going to display in Unreal. You're just going to be able to see straight through any open faces. We could make the glass material double-sided, but that causes more translucency problems. So the easiest thing to do is back in Maya, especially since we have loads of polygons to spare, is grab this edge and extrude it and just copy loosely the shape on the way in. All I'm doing is extruding and dragging, and you know what, let's just tuck it in like that. We're never going to see, there's no gap there. So we're going to merge these to vertices to vertices. Oops. Merge vertices, merge to center. So the cork's just tucked through the mesh, but we're not going to notice a difference there. I would add bevels on this. This 45-degree edge is going to be very obviously CG if you don't. So let's just bevel that. We've got the polygons to spare, like I said. Scale that in. Scale that in. Let's make this something like that. Looks pretty good. I'm just going to... So normally I would bevel this, but it's hidden under the frame, so I think the right choice has been made not to. Just going to duplicate this to the high. Okay. The same with this edge. It can't be so hard. Something like that. It's going to look a lot more natural. To be honest, I would do the same on here. But then the high poly doesn't have bevels, so these edges, this is triangulated, so can we quadrangulate? Nope. Never seems to work. Yeah, we've got some issues here. Gonna manually connect these with multi-cut and weld. So these really long, thin triangles like this, these can cause some really flickery artifacts when rendering. It's never good to have triangles like that on any mesh. From what I can tell, by how this was triangulated, it was a mistake anyway. Yeah, we have the same here. So I think it's been done once and then just duplicated around. So we'll just tidy that. I'm going to manually untriangulate this. You can see this is also an n-gon because we don't need this edge at all. So some of this is triangulated and some isn't, and I'm honestly not sure why. Most of it doesn't need to be. We can just leave these as quads. Now normally I would just work on one corner and duplicate it round or mirror it round, but I can never be sure that your guys' work, whether it's actually symmetrical. And I don't want to risk it, so I'm just going to do the same operation 4 times rather than hoping that it's going to be symmetrical or on the center of the grid or whatever. And whenever I use target weld, make sure you check, because sometimes when you grab the tool, you'll have a random vertex selected and you'll weld something and it's going to pull a random vert in from elsewhere. So let's get rid of these 2, or 4 I should say. And these 2, and this half ring. There's a tiny change to the edge profile there, but it's not going to be noticeable, I don't think. Better to save the polygon, easier UVs, blah, 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 blah. Delete, 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 double click, delete. Fantastic. Going to delete all this triangulation here. Which, you know, Painter's going to triangulate our quads anyway, so. Oh, there we go. I had an extra edge selected. Always just check around, just in case. Messed anything up. Looks good. I'm going to do a quick cleanup on this. Just to check. Thinks these are non-manifold. But it thinks there's something wrong with them. Just check for floating verts. Could be the case. I'm going to delete So if you select all verts and delete without holding control, if you press control delete, it's going to delete them all, including the edges that they support. If you press delete, it's only going to remove verts that don't have any edges. Let's go to edit mesh merge, 96. We turn the threshold up, nothing happens, so we can be pretty confident there's no stacked verts here. In that case, I'm happy with it. Now, this is what I was saying about the hard edges, the 45-degree edges. It might be worth, considering the poly count is so low on this mesh, go around. This is the same thing we did on the lantern, if you remember the lantern modeling lesson. We've got all the outside edges selected by selecting these loops. We can bevel, and we can get quite a nice smooth result. If we soften this, so unlock normals first, soften edge. Looks a bit more natural in my opinion. If we triangulate these, not bad. So we have an n-gon here from the bevel. Just go round, triangulate them all. And we'll have the same on the bottom as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this piece to the high, because we've tidied it up on the low. Remember, we can always do a mesh cleanup to check for n-gons, right? So turn off all the non-manifold stuff. Just enable select matching polygons and faces with more than 4 sides. So what it's looking for is any face with 5 sides or more, and it should just select them for us. And nothing's selected, so we know that our mesh is fine. So let's grab the frame from the low and delete it. From the high, sorry, and duplicate the one from the low, put it in. Nice. So there's a little problem with this piece, which I noticed in the bake, but these have been, I think, laid out by hand, so all we have to do is just move it. Doesn't matter, it has to be perfect because it's going to be baked on anyway. So here's our low, sitting at 900 polygons. We've got so many to spare. This thing doesn't need any change, it's already triangulated. Personally, I don't like these really long triangles going all the way down, so why don't we just change the way that it's done a tiny bit. I'm going to grab, because we don't need these extra points down here if we already have these points at the side, yeah? So we can just delete all this. This part is, there's corners anyway, right? So we can just, oh, my bad there, that's my mistake. I think it multi-cut on the wrong side when I first did it. So what we can do is we can just grab, in fact, it's probably safer to use tab, the paint selection. So select one, paint the ones we do want. Nice thing about the tab paint selection is it never selects through the mesh. So we're never going to accidentally select anything from the opposite side. It's just I missed a couple there. So this is a, I mean, I feel like we could lose a few corners on this anyway. Let's do it. One. I'm going to remove every other loop, save some polygons. Still looks round. Get rid of those. Get rid of that. nicer topology, I think. Using connect components, my favorite way to link up topology. And let's grab this one, stick it in the corner, and this one to the corner. And then our edge flow is already gone, so we may as well go for all tries. That way, when our mesh gets triangulated automatically by Painter, it's not going to surprise us with any weird solutions. So here to here, connect components, and here to here. I'm just pressing G to repeat the last used operation. I think that's a lot cleaner than the solution we had before. Maybe you would want to bevel these corners a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper. It's not, you know, you can do stuff in a texture that's going to hide the hard edges. It's really nice and low now as well. So there's our low. Also need to move the cork onto the low, the new cork. There's our high, there's our low so far. So, some small fixes. Seems like just this side sticks up a tiny bit. See, like, this is really sunk in. Okay. And we could spend all day fiddling these, but at the end of the day, the distance doesn't have to be exact because the rays are going to come in from outside and print these on however far away they are. We just want them to be close to touching. That's fine. That's fine. I think this one's going to be a bit raised off the surface. Yeah. Tuck him in. He's fine. He's maybe a little low, if anything. Like I said, it's not the end of the world if these aren't all exactly the same. So, what you didn't have on your low poly was anything for this to bake onto, right? And it's really difficult because this is so high poly. I would love to delete a bunch of the edge loops going all the way along and then select only the edge loops around which I want to keep and delete everything else, like with invert selection. But I've tried working with this mesh and it's basically lags out Maya if you try and do that. I'm going to ungroup everything actually whilst we're working here. We get transforms nested and stuff like the curve. Oh, we still have the curve. Okay, problem solved. Don't duplicate it actually and just move it. Fantastic. Okay, well that makes everything easier. We can just make... I never remember to keep the curve, honestly. 5-sided shape. Scale it way down. Remember the bounding box center of a mesh is not going to be the exact center if it has a weird number of axes, a weird number of sides, right? So the bounding box is a square that goes from this point to this point, and the middle of that square is here. So if I center pivot, it actually puts the pivot in the wrong place. It's the center on a 4-axis shape, but this is more complicated. That happens with 3-sided stuff, presumably happens with 7-sided stuff as well, though it's less noticeable. Just make sure you snap it manually to the middle point. I'm going to hold down C for curve snap. Snap it onto the end of the curve. And rotate. So all we're going to do this pivot point was wrong. What we're going to do is copy the thickness of the existing curve mesh. There's some issues there anyway, but something to deal with later. Get it as close as possible. So I'm going to use curve snapping again. I'm going to isolate these. Holding down C. That'll do. Then I'm going to select. Let's actually put it behind the start of the curve. It's better if it jumps to the start of the curve than if it, because what it's going to do, if it's in front of the start of the curve, it's going to go backwards and then forwards, and it's probably what's happened here that's caused this janky bit. We can always delete the bit that's left over for the bake. So select the object, go to face mode, select all the faces, and shift select the curve. We're in multi-component selection. Control E, extrude along the curve. And we want to see how few verts, how few divisions we can have and still get a good curve. Remember, we have loads to spare because this low is so low. So let's go. It's going to be like, it's probably not going to be less than 100, I should imagine. 200. 200 seems pretty good. If I select the whole mesh, we're at 3,000 polygons, so we've got loads to spare. Fantastic. I was going to say we should sort this out on the high. That's the lazy fix, right? Fill hole. Hook face. This mesh is very laggy. Is that 2 million? No. 300,000. Delete history of freeze transformations. I'm going to duplicate this. And then I can just quickly set my tool to component. So now I can move this in the direction of the face normals, which is nice. Just scale that in. That should bake a-okay. Gonna delete the high. Gonna delete history freeze transformations. Soften harden. I'm gonna actually go soften all edges. Grab the ends. There's another end in here somewhere. And harden the ends. Nice. So now I can delete the curve. Once you've deleted history, this mesh is no longer dependent on the curve anymore, so we can say goodbye to the curve. No issues. So, for the bake, we need our runes to be attached to the frame because we want to bake by mesh name, obviously. So we want the runes, if I grab them all in the outliner, and this frame and these runes, not those runes. We want this to be one mesh to bake onto this, yeah? So let's name our low first. Let's group our low, actually. Low. Rope. Low. Tag. Low. Remember, you need no caps in the suffix, or the baker won't recognize it. Glass. Low. Frame. Low. Cork. Low. So now we know this is all our high. I'm actually not going to group it yet because when you combine stuff, it jumps out of the groups. It's easy to do it all at the end, but we have all our low stuff grouped so it's not going to interfere. So I can select everything called runes. And this runes, I believe, is the frame. I'm going to go mesh combine. Edit mesh. Actually, I shouldn't merge. See, I would normally merge verts, but I'm worried in places like this. Jesus Christ, it's laggy. There's vertices here that are close enough to each other that they might merge together and it would create non-manifold geometry. So that's the reason I'm not going to merge. Deleting the history should speed up my interaction with this mesh. Yeah, much better. Yeah. So often when you've done a really complicated operation, in that case, it was one operation that wasn't complicated, but it was doing a lot of things. It was combining a lot of vertices together. You get this lag until you delete the history. It's the reason we have the delete history function. Rope. Hi. Cork. Hi. So you'll notice this cork, this tag, and this bottle are the same between the high and the low. But if we want to use bake by mesh name, we still need to have a version named the same in each thing. So in this case, it's basically going to be like use low poly mesh as high because it's just baking to itself. It's baking the same geometry to itself. But we still need this in order to do our proper bake on this part and this part, yeah. Is that just aliasing, or do I need to soften those edges? And leave. I mean, I would like to soften those edges, but it's going to lag if I do it, so not worth it. It's going to bake fine. So tag high, glass high, and frame high. So let's check we named everything correctly. It's in a group already. Ungroup. So I'm going to order them the same like I always do. Frame, rope, cork, glass, tag, frame low, frame high, rope low, rope high, cork low, cork high, glass high, tag, yeah. So just making sure every first word is capitalized and every last word is not, and we have spelled everything correctly, and there's no extra characters in there or anything. So there's our high poly mesh. Snap all the pivots to the bottom. There's our low poly mesh. Just in time for some UV editing, not XGen, UV. So I think part of the reason Vine was having trouble with his bake is that a lot of this was not UV'd, or it was using the default UVs, which really aren't up to par. So to begin with, I'm going to create a camera based. Here's our cork. Easy peasy. Cut the top off. Pick a side that's not going to be seen. Hopefully this side. Cut the bottom off. And where's cut and sew gone? Am I blind? Yes, I am. Cut. Select the whole mesh. Move it up here. Unfold. Orient. Cool. So the rope is going to be super easy. Isolating in the 2D view as well is helpful. Going to grab the ends. I was wondering if there was a way. Ah, there we go. Lazy way to grab everything without having to isolate. I'm going to create UV shell. So that's basically making a cut all around the perimeter of the face selection that I made. Now this whole thing could lay out flat. Obviously, there's an issue with that, which you will see. So can we deselect up here? We don't want cuts on there, it's unneeded. And deselect here. We've got a seam that's quite well hidden inside, like it's on the inside of the mesh. We could even do this one. Yeah, that's a better one. Just because, you know, when we're outside the bottle, that seam's going to be basically invisible, so it's better to do it that way. Got to just try and find a way to deselect that one. If I cut this and then unfold, we have a massively long stick, which is perfect for doing our rope texture, although you actually won't need a rope texture because you have a nice twisted rope to bake. But this is gonna, if we lay this out, it's gonna limit the size that other shells can be on the UV by a huge amount. So we're gonna have to make a bunch of cuts on this, and I think the easiest way to do that is to just pick one side towards the back and just cut every section all the way down. It's a lot of cuts, but it's probably going to be worth it. There we go. We have all our rope as segments. I don't like this piece. I'm going to just sew this one back up. So actually, in that case, good use for stitch together, just so it doesn't stretch the shells, but I'm going to unfold 4-inch shells layout anyway. Put it out of the way. Okay, the bottle should be easy. Cut in there. It's a good place. It's hidden. Cut down there. And in this case, we have the advantage of the bottle having a frame on the corners. So normally I wouldn't do this, but in this case, we may as well cut every corner. This will help us lay the glass out more efficiently. And it's going to be covered up by the frame, so perfect. So it seems like I'm doing all my seams on this back side. We do need one seam on the neck that goes all the way down. So I'm going to do it here. Let's just de-isolate so we can see everything. That works for me. Cut. I'm going to unfold everything. Now apparently there's non-manifold geometry here, so I'm going to just save it first before we progress, because I'm worried it might crash. Where could there be non-manifold geometry in this mesh? Let's have a look inside first. Seems fine. Let's check on Smooth Mesh Preview. It also seems fine, so I wonder what it could be. Let's see what happens when we unfold. So this prompt is saying we can't unfold this geometry because it's non-manifold. We can't unfold these UVs because it's non-manifold geometry. It's going to attempt to fix it and then unfold. So normally what it does is it at least, even if it doesn't fix it properly, it shows you where the problem is. Okay, so obvious one. I'm going to undo. Aha! So there are 3 vertices here, which is weird because I'm sure I did merge to center on that. But we just go edit mesh merge, and well, it's done it already, so we can actually do it again, just in case there's any more. Nope. So now, there we go, unfolds fine. We got the neck, we got the base, and then our 4 sides. Now, the nice thing about this is that they're kind of triangular, so we can do a little Subway cheese job here and arrange them in a way where they're going to lay out really efficiently by alternating their angles. There we go. Nice. So that's a pretty good use of UV space, considering we should have a nice high-res glass texture. Remember, we are unfolding our glass separately from everything else because it's going to have a different shader. So what I'm going to do is, whilst I'm here, I'm going to assign a new Lambert to it. Good time to do it before I forget. We've got so much history on this mesh, I can't get to the material, so I'm just going to delete history. And then there's the Lambert 5. I don't know what element Florence was. Ice, I guess. It's got runes on it. And I'm going to call this material glass. And I've given it the color just so I can clearly see what's on one material and what's on the other material. I'm going to select everything else and assign Lambert 1, the default material, just to confirm there aren't any extra materials on there. So the frame should be pretty easy. This is not a good sign. The fact that there's a cut here suggests to me that there's non-manifold geometry. One vertex, two, oh no, one vertex, weird. Let's just try and create a new camera based. Let's try and run a mesh cleanup. And we're going to select all the non-manifold geometry stuff this time. We want cleanup. Okay. Very helpful, Maya. So it's only on one side, which seems really weird to me. Weird. Sometimes it's probably a non-manifold UV or something. Remember, there's multiple UVs per vertex, and it just is quite hard to fix. An easy way can be just delete the face, fill the hole, and it kind of resets the UVs. Maybe I need to unlock the normals, that might have fixed it. But that's an easy fix. Do we have any on the bottom? Yes, we do. Let's try and do a mesh display on normals, and then try and create a new camera based. No, still the same result, but it's easy enough. We may have double edges actually, now I think about it. But it's weird because this edge was created by beveling, so then if I deselect those, yeah, we do have double edges there. But if we go in edge mode, merge edges, yeah, okay, that did it. Okay, so in that instance, we had double edges. We had to select the mesh in edge mode to fix the problem. Something looks dodgy there, though. Seeing a little white flash when I zoom out on that section. Whatever. So in this case, how we're going to UV this, kind of similar to doing the lantern, I guess. Ooh. It's triangulated differently on the inside, and it's not a problem. It's just annoying me that it's not symmetrical. Can I be bothered to fix it? I guess. Disconnect components. Shift key not working? There we go. It has occurred to me that we also have geometry we don't need here. We could merge this down. No change to the mesh. Remember that there's no need to do this because Florin's well under the poly count, but why not, you know? And we still have a quad here, so this is fine. It's not changing anything. So the top is all triangulated fine. It's just at the bottom. We have this. So I'm going to just delete them. Grab the verts I want to connect, which is here, here, and here. And connect components. Target weld. Drag that down. So here, edge, edge, delete, vertex, vertex, vertex. Not there, sorry. Vertex, vertex, vertex. Connect the components. In this case, it doesn't matter because we can just weld this down and it'll be the same. And here. Perfect. Save the tiny bit of polygons. Always worth it. That triangulation is giving us a tiny little shading error though. I think we actually need to have it triangulate like that. Yeah. Small fix, just to improve the shading. Shift, come on. That's because I only had one vert selected. So a cool thing you can do with connect components is I can select these three. It can't connect these two because there's edges in between, so I can connect two at once, like this. Same again. I'm just improving the shading here because I don't know if you could see, but with this triangulation we have this kind of hard edge here. There's a tiny seam here, but it's going to be hidden more by the... This is a preference, obviously. And we can harden those edges if we want to make sure we don't get the shading error, but it's going to be really minor. Okay. Whatever I do on this, I'm just going to copy it to the low since it's to the high, since they're the same piece, obviously. So I'm going to do a quick camera based again, just to be sure everything's got UV space. I'm going to figure out how we are going to UV this one. My gut instinct would be to cut the legs off. We could unfold it as one, but it's not going to be a good use of UV space. It's going to be really chunky on the UV area. Let's start with the easy bit. Let's create a UV shell for this part. So this is the two, the bottom and the top. They can just lay out like so. You can isolate this part, see what we're working with. So we could just make one cut and unfold this whole thing, but it's going to be like a cage. Like if we did something like this, for example. Well, actually, we need to take these sides out. Yeah, I think it's going to be better to cut the legs off. Sadly, we can't double-click these loops, which is really annoying. What we can do is grab the legs. Yeah, this is the quickest way for sure. Create UV shell for these legs. And then we just cut them down the middle of the back. So now the legs unfold like this. Bunch of strips. And we're left with these parts, which should all unfold actually, because they just need cuts here. Wait, what? Ah, okay. Okay. I forgot one when I was doing... I forgot many when I was doing the welding. There we go. So now these are... Shit. I created non-manifold UVs by welding it like that. So I just made a new projection and it worked. Better to do that than to use the default automatic fix. So it's going to make a mess of stuff. It's going to make loads of cuts. Nice. So that unfolds and uses the space really efficiently because everything's cut into nice little chunks. So we have the cork, the string, the label, and the frame. We just need to finish the label. This one's going to be really easy. So I don't want to take this edge off. It's so thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and do this like a, you know, one of those paper cubes you put together by gluing the tabs. So it's going to be like an interlocking shape. I don't know if you can see that really in the way I've done it here, but I'll show you here as well. Like this part is hidden by the rope. So I'd rather do it like this, like interlocking teeth, than have messy tiny strips cut off. So you can see this is kind of distorted. It's kind of fucked, actually. I guess we do have to cut this part out. Create UV shell. Create camera based, sorry. Make a little snip in there. So this should all unfold fine now. So around the edge you can see I kept the side here, I lost it there, I kept it here, I lost it there, and it's the reverse on this piece. So it's just, instead of having a one thin shelf all the way around, what's nice now is that these unfold nice and straight, which allows for easy putting text on the label. So if I grab everything, I don't need to mess with the bottle, it's already laid out, so I'm just going to shift select everything else. Unfold, just to be sure, orange shells and layout. And that's a pretty nice pack. We're wasting a bit of space up here, so I'm just going to grab a few of something. We want to ideally keep all the same parts, the same orientation in case we use procedurals. So I'm going to keep all the rope facing up and down. I'm going to put all of these horizontal. And they should be horizontal the same way. So I'm going to put the widest part at the bottom. I don't know actually which way that is on the mesh. It doesn't matter. So like so. And we just want a few more parts facing horizontally to fill up the UV space a little bit more. So let's have all of these horizontal. These are the pieces from the bottom of the frame, I believe. Yeah, okay. I'm hoping I can straighten UVs on this piece, yes. And that's not because I care about putting a procedural on this, it's just because I want it to fit the UV space better. Same for the center of the label. Straighten just the center just for the text projection that we'll presumably be doing. Nice. Okay, it could be a tiny bit better. Still could be a tiny bit better. I don't know, do we want to break the fact that we have all the string the right way up? No, I'm happy with that. We're wasting 50 pixels maybe. So, I'm going to delete history of these transformations. Once again, I said I'm going to... Well, actually, we like the shading on this, right? There's no shading error on this. So we can just bake that to this. Should be fine. So I'm going to re-export this. Just overwrite the ones I already had for painter. Making sure I snap to the grid. Put this over, you can see it aligns perfectly. Florin low. Just quickly check the names. Yeah, seems fine. Look at that low. Looks really nice already. So we have glass and Lambert 1 now, so we know we have two separate materials. 2K, don't need an ID map. We do want to match by mesh name. I'm not going to use anti-aliasing to begin with. And we know the runes are off the surface a little bit, so we want to add a little bit of frontal distance, like 0.02. And I tend to just keep frontal and rear the same. By mesh name, no anti-aliasing, just test, and we go. Valid mesh normals still, so it's not loading the high. Oh, I didn't select the high, I'm a fucking idiot. We all make mistakes. There we go. I'll be honest with you, bakes do not come out much better than that. Everything seems to be in the bake, so I'm just going to turn up the anti-aliasing. We don't need to adjust these distances at all. I'm just going to bake it again. Looking good. One thing I might do is stiffen the edges on this high poly rope. The problem is it's so high poly it's going to take a good few minutes. So you might want to save first and cancel the operation if it's taking too long. But look at that. Absolutely fantastic. Let's drag a couple of smart materials on just so we can see how everything's looking. Glass on the glass, obviously. This is just my usual default glass. Let's grab some kind of iron forged. Nice. I'm gonna just add a white mask to that and mask out all this stuff. Burlap is a good starting point for the rope. Drag that onto the rope. Now there is actually geometry masking now in the new version of Painter. I have not delved into it yet, but we could mask this piece to be just rope. I'm still gonna just use a normal mask for now, and just mask out, obviously in polygon fill, mask out everything that's not the rope. So that's a good start, but we need to pick out the dark from the bake. So what I'm going to do is shove fill layer on. I'm actually just going to use the ambient occlusion map that we have as the base color and just set it on multiply. Add a levels. Something like that. Then we spend a lot more time doing proper fibers and stuff on that. Because it's laid out straight, we could also add additional fibers on top. Get rid of some of these really crunchy layers. That one as well. I have a cardboard material I made for a previous project, which I'm going to use for the label. If you're interested in this material, I basically looked at the canvas material that is smart material and used that as a kind of starting point. Add a black mask, put the label in. And for the cork, some kind of wood, I'll just delete the grain from it. Wood old ship might work here. It looks kind of cool with that wood grain, but I'm actually going to find the veins, delete, wood fibers, delete. So that's a really good result. So obviously more time needs to be spent texturing, of course. Something is wrong with the UV of the base. It's not, but it doesn't matter. This is not sure what's causing that. But it's down under the mesh, so who cares? Everything that's important looks great. If you want to apply a label projection, obviously the label is really nicely laid out square. So we would do it inside of our label stack. Add a new paint layer. See if I have some kind of label in textures. I had some labels from messing around with the mesh the other day. This is the hemlock one. I just got, these are just images from Google, obviously. Thought I had a portrait one. Maybe not. I'll put something else on it. I'll put this to go into the tool. Scroll down to material mode, base color, and remove all the other channels. This is a shotgun box, shotgun ammo box label. I did demo this tool before, but just in case anyone forgot. So obviously the background is too light, but I'm actually going to change the blending mode in just a sec. Delete the black border. I'm going to switch the blending mode to multiply. I'm going to add the levels. And I'm going to just crunch the background down to nothing. I'm going to add a hue saturation lightness, HSL perceptive. There it is. Saturation all the way down. I'm still on the eraser tool here. Just removing anything I don't want. Obviously, we could put the same thing on the other side. We could even use there's a clone stamp tool that I literally never use. I'm not sure how you pick the source. It's not the same as Photoshop. I'd have to check the documentation. There we go. Cool stuff. So hopefully that's helpful to Florian and anyone else who's struggling